What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome to episode 16 of our 30-part series on every single GMAX Pokemon. In this series, my guests and I go in depth on every Gigantamax Pokemon out there. We'll be covering their stats, move pools, potential teammates, impact on the Sword and Shield competitive meta, and in the end, give it a ranking. Once the series is over, I'll be giving you my top 10 GMAX Pokemon in Sword and Shield. Now, last time we covered GMAX GRIMMSNARL with JV Westside, so if you missed it, make sure to go and check it out. But this time around, we're looking at GMAX Alcremie with the coach of the Miami Men's, OGalbina. How's it going, Owen?
Hey man, it's going pretty good. I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about Alcremie and what it does well and all this stuff.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, all of Owen's links are in the description down below, so make sure to go and check them out. And as always, if you're excited for the video, make sure to smash the like button, comment your thoughts on GMAX Alcremie, and subscribe for more competitive Pokemon content. Now, Owen, what is your absolute favorite thing about GMAX Alcremie?
Now, in my experience with using it, my favorite thing and the thing that came up the most clutch I noticed when I was using it was going to be its GMAX move, GMAX Finale. It's really nice when you're a really bulked up, beefed up Gigantamax Pokemon and you're able to not only do a lot of damage with your stab move, but also gain back a little bit of that HP that you're taking prior due to your pretty low speed. You're usually going to be going second anyways. Being able to slowly gain back health for when you eventually un-GMAX up, you can be at a healthier amount and stuff like that, I think is really, really clutch for it.
I'm going to say Max Finale is probably one of the 10 best max moves out there. I definitely believe that. It's incredible. It's the only way that any GMAX mon is gaining HP in their GMAX form outside of like terrain recovery or something or leftovers. So it's super valuable. And of course, it's coming off of a fairy type move, which is one of the best offensive types in the entire game. I find that his coverage is absolutely phenomenal with fire coverage for Mystical Fire, psychic moves like Sword Power, Psychic, and Side Shock, and then you got grass moves as well. Really, the only thing you're not hitting well are like fire types that are also psychic types like Victini and Delphox. Was there anything that you felt like is missing in terms of coverage? Because I know you've used it before.
Honestly, all you really need, especially with an offensive fairy or a fairy that you want to use offensively in GMAX Alcremie most of the time I've kind of noticed, is really going to just be that psychic fairy and fire coverage honestly hits a good majority of the meta. The only thing that really draws it back is going to be that speed. But other than that, if you can get those big hits off, and especially when you GMAX up and are able to lift those hits a little bit better, it's honestly really, really solid coverage for it overall.
And it gets really boosted up by the fact that it gets so many options for setup. You get access to Acid Armor and Calm Mind, and those are really the only two, but they're so fantastic. Acid Armor to boost up your defense, which is kind of lackluster compared to your other stats, especially your special defense in comparison, really makes it shine as a wall on both ends, but also with 110 special attack, you can just be a terrifying wall breaker who's just going to be tough to take down.
Oh yeah, definitely. And both of those setup options also lead to cool options like Stored Power really being a cool potential way of breaking through mons with this thing as well. If you're not playing a Dark Orb, just due to the fact that you're an Alcremie and Darks aren't really going to want to take you on anyways, it's not their initial check for sure. If you can get up an Acid Armor or two, a couple Calm Minds, Stored Power can start ripping through some teams as well.
It definitely can. And the one thing I do want to point out about Alcremie that it really sucks is its speed is kind of like mediocre, I'll say. 64 is fine. You're not outspeeding too much, but you'll outspeed a bunch of walls that are obviously a lot slower, but you're not slow enough to the point where you can effectively run Trick Room, and you can't even set up a Trick Room for yourself, and you also have no way to boost your speed through max Airstream. So it feels kind of lackluster. It kind of feels easy to revenge kill if you're not already set up, and that could be a bit of a problem. Did you experience anything like that when you used it in the GDL?
Oh, 100%. And it's part of the reason that outside of a GMAX setting, I don't think I would really consider drafting Alcremie as my fairy, because of its pretty low HP stat and its pretty bad defense stat when you combine the two, and its bad speed. It can get overwhelmed a lot, and you typically want your fairies to be that nice defensive wall, nice big pivot into those offensive dark and fighting types and things like that, which Alcremie does definitely struggle with, which is why I kind of mentioned that using it in a more offensive role seemed to give me a little bit more success in a lot of matchups. If you're going up against an Urshifu, Alcremie is not going to be a great check, because one stray poison grab and you're getting blown to the next dimension. It's definitely not the best thing for it. But the fact that it can GMAX, which is part of the reason why I drafted it, it really does kind of circumvent that really bad defense stat and that really kind of physical frailty. In all honesty, doubling your HP lets you live those physical hits a lot easier than you typically would. And again, GMAX finaling up some of that health after you take that big hit can be really beneficial too.
Now we're going to talk quickly about its ability. It's basically just Aroma Veil and Sweet Veil, I think it is, but Aroma Veil is the one you're running pretty much all the time. I think it's useful. It's perfect for Alcremie. It's just not the best ability in the world, but it gets the job done. You don't have to worry about Taunt or Encore or Disable whenever you're being either it's a cleric for your team with something like aromatherapy, or you're trying to recover back HP, or just setup in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that definitely not necessarily holds it back, and it makes sense, and it's nice in the sense that if you're getting going and you're really starting to set up and stuff like that, a random like Stallbreaker Mew can't come in and 1v1 you super easy and something like that. If you're before you get out of hand, you're going to be able to continuously boost up and do things like that, or you're going to get off that clutch aromatherapy if you're not GMAXed up or something like that, which can definitely help you out in the long run. It's just not like a big powerhouse ability where like, yes, this is great for the Pokemon.
Now, I mentioned it before, but you were in the GDL as well, and you had GMAX Alcremie. Obviously, in that league, we had to hold a Pokeball on our GMAX, which kind of holds it back a little bit. I have two questions for you. Number one is, did you feel really held back? Did you feel like Alcremie definitely needs to have an item to definitely reach its full potential and become a much better mon than it is? And two, if it could carry items, which items would you be running on it?
That was a big part in me drafting Alcremie, I noticed, is I didn't want to draft a GMAX that was held back majorly by not holding an item, and I felt like GMAX Alcremie was actually one of the ones that didn't need it as much as others. Obviously, it's nice. You don't want to not have an item on your Pokemon. You want the lefty's residual, or whatever berry you may be holding, random life orb if you want it. But I felt like it wasn't needed, especially with the GMAX finale. You're still getting residual, health back when after turns end and attacking and stuff like that. And it's not like a guaranteed need, like a boost on a Charizard or something like that. And you're typically not running boosting items in the special attack nature or anything like that, like a life orb or anything like that with Alcremie typically anyways. So I felt like it was actually one of the Pokemon that was hurt by that the least, though I think it hurts all Pokemon to a certain extent. Like, it's still not great for it. As for items I would have run, you would have seen a lot of lefties. I think this thing really does benefit from resist berries, things like a Kevia berry or a Babiri berry for the potential coverage moves that Fighting and Darks might throw off against you. Maybe an occasional life orb. Yeah, I would honestly see myself running lefties and probably a resist berry or two for the most part, though.
Yeah, I'm going to say it was tough for me to find items that were really going to be common on this thing, and you definitely hit the nail on the head. Leftovers, Babiri and Kebia are the absolute cream of the crop. I did want to kind of throw out a Salac berry. I think that's decent because you're getting a bunch of HP back through your max finale. You have recover as well, and once you pop that Salac berry, you have good enough speed to the point where you're outspeeding a lot of the mons in the meta, especially considering that Sword and Shield with the reduced amount of mons in the game. Obviously, Crown Tundra is basically being released in like an hour from when we're recording this. There's a lot of slower mons, that's just a fact. So allowing yourself to outspeed those things that aren't scarfed allows you to set up some more, recover back, and just be a much bigger pain in the ass for those things to deal with.
Oh yeah, definitely. And again, that's the main thing that really sold GMAX Alcremie for me. It was definitely its move, and it's pretty good coverage for the things it really needed to hit when it maxed up. It hits things really, really hard despite not being like the most terrifying offensive mon on paper.
Yeah, and now you and I both know it's not a tier 1 GMAX. It's usually going to be tier 2, maybe even tier 3 depending on the league, and it definitely has some weaknesses. What are some Pokemon that you would pair with it to really enforce it and make it a much better Pokemon, be the best GMAX Alcremie it could be?
So there's a couple things that I think are really important. One, you want to have offensive threats that kind of beat in pressure and beat down the things that Alcremie doesn't appreciate. I drafted Dugtrio with Alcremie, and I think it's a great pair with it. I'm a big Dugtrio fan. I'm a big Gothitelle fan. I think just forcing your opponent to prep for you trapping their Pokemon is big enough in itself, and if they don't, you obviously get to do that, and I think that's perfectly exemplified with Alcremie, because if you are able to trap that poison type that switches into your Fairy Stab, that steel type that switches into your Fairy Stab, you don't have to stay and take that big hit and throw off a Mystical Fire after. You can just get rid of them outright, which is honestly amazing. In my week 1 game of GDL, actually, I think I played the only fairy resist on my opponent's team that I was really worried about was a Toxtricity, and my opponent didn't bring Shell. I trapped it like turn 2 with Dugtrio, and Alcremie was able to set up later in the game and win. So I think Dougie is a phenomenal pair. Because, I mean, and even if they do go Shed Shell, that means they're not running lefties. That means they're not running Akka. So they're much more liable to get chipped down and put into range of Alcremie or something else in your team. So I think that's obviously really clutch. I think a good fighting type is great with it to break through those steel types. I think getting secondary fighting resist so that you're not putting a bunch of defensive pressure on Alcremie to take on those strong physically offensive ons is really nice, like a Talonflame, something like that, maybe a good flyer, because you don't always necessarily want to double up on the fairy typing, or like a fat psychic, like a Reuniclus that can even set Trick Room for or something like that, because you're pretty mediocre speed.
All those are fantastic. They really are. It's a testament to what kind of Pokemon Alcremie is. It fits on so many different teams because it's a fairy type, because of its stats, because of what it does on a team, its role it provides. There's so many different options. For me, I felt like I kind of want to go a bit more of a defensive route. I want to make sure that I had a Pokemon that could really effectively check the steels, flyers, and poison types that can come in on it, and the only real type that does that effectively over the course of all of them is going to be a really good water type, but one that is not passive. So if you're going to be drafting something like, I don't know, a water thing that, let's say a Quillfish, for example, it doesn't get flip turn. I know it gets Haze and Intimidate, but it's not necessarily the best because you're not getting a ton of recovery from it as well. It's basically Pain Split and Leftovers. There are better options. Something like a Milotic is amazing because it does get access to flip turn. With Marvel Skill, you can boost up your defense, making sure that you can take those physical hits. I know it doesn't really want to all the time, but it is a very good physically defensive wall when it is burnt or poisoned or paralyzed or whatever. And if you do have a high enough pick, I feel like an Urshifu Rapid Strike, if you're lucky enough, is incredible because it gets rid of all those different types we mentioned before. It gets a U-turn to get into the GMAX Alcremie to allow it to set up for game because the things that would check Urshifu aren't necessarily going to be checking Alcremie, which is nice. And if you can't get Urshifu, Keldeo, similar story. It's a bit faster, a bit more specially offensive. So those are 3 mons that I find are definitely solid when paired with GMAX Alcremie. Looking at this Pokemon, considering the value you're getting it because we know it's not a tier 1 Mega, what kind of ranking would you give it on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest?
Personally, I think I would go with a 7. I really enjoyed GMAX Alcremie. I think it was my kill leader in GDL. I had a lot of fun using it, but I do think it requires a lot of support and a lot more support than I initially realized. So it can be a bit of a pain, but I think if you do draft around it correctly and, you know, are able to get it in freely and get those free setup opportunities, it can be a really, really big nuisance. And it's definitely really nice in prep and stuff like that. So I think I'd give it a solid 7, maybe an 8, just because of the value. Obviously, it's not one of the best GMAXs in the format if you are playing in GMAX format, but I think it's definitely a very solid one nonetheless.
I kind of fall exactly with you. I'm at 7.5. I use it in the APA Academy, and to me, it was the most fun I had building with one individual mon in a long time. It's just the amount of creativity you can have with the EVs with it is fantastic. If you really like to fool around with the EVs, find the most consistent, efficient set as possible, then Alcremie is going to be a ton of fun for you to use. I know it was a blast for me. And what about you? Did you have anything else you want to mention when it comes to GMAX Alcremie?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all as far as I can think.
Awesome, because the video is getting kind of long, but we'll go ahead and get started with the outro right now. You guys have heard what we think now, and I want to hear from you. So make sure to leave a comment down below on your thoughts about GMAX Alcremie and what partners you would want to pair with it. We're an awesome community over here, and your answer just might help someone with their next draft. If you guys want to learn more about GMAX Pokemon, feel free to check out the other videos in the series. There's a playlist in the description and in the cards. And if for some reason this is your first time watching one of my videos, consider subscribing, especially if you like competitive Pokemon. And of course, don't forget to like the video as well. The next episode will be out real soon, and you never know who'll be joining us. Owen, thanks for joining me today. Why don't you let everyone know what you got going on?
So over on my channel, we just have plenty of draft content as well. I believe we have 3 Wi-Fi leagues started, slated for Crown Hunter release, so that's plenty of that. We're going to be doing plenty of Wi-Fi battles as well, whether it be the OU tier, Ubers, UU, plenty of stuff like that if you want to see the new mons in action, the returning mons and all that stuff. We have plenty of stuff over there, so if that interests you, maybe go give it a look, see what you think.
Highly recommend his channel. His links are in the description, Twitter as well. And thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.